Hello? 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 Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to join this great initiative. In the lecture I'll do, as you can see the title here, about hybrid architecture, I'm going to introduce a concept, a very particular concept that I've been developing for many years on hybrid architecture, but mainly with the goal of developing and talking here a bit about how architecture and urban design are inseparable, how through architecture we can impact, redefine, rethink the city, and how through the public space a lot, and finally how the public space and spatial dimensions are a key factor in sustainability in the development of the contemporary city. So, starting with this image from Fritz Lang, Metropolis, I'm going back to the beginning of the 20th century, where architects, artists, visionaries dreamed with the city of the future where we are living now. And we could do an infinite series of designs, paintings, films, and we can see that mainly they are based on verticality, highness, and mobility and the connections. We arrived there, they were right. Verticality and mobility are key factors of the developed megacity, contemporary city, fruit of the densification, fruit of the invention of the elevator that allowed the city to grow vertically. It's another very interesting topic that I will not unfold here. But although it's linked to the densification, theoretically something that unfolded to host bigger, greatest amounts of city, we can relate directly with Cairo and with this second multiplication of the size of cities. If we look a little bit deeper or with more attention to different cities, I put here Barcelona, Shanghai, Mumbai, and India, with all of them dense cities, with completely different typologies. And we can see now in each of the cases how very different models of urban models are somehow also expressing a culture, a way of living, an identity, a part of the planet, a climate, etc. No? Something that we have known until now, no? The expression, the form of the city is somehow related to the identity culture, whatever happens in this specific place, somehow form, shape related with specificity. No? But if we relate with the beginning, now particularly interested in this, and we search for these key factors that were anticipated and taken as reference and are like the flag and the model of the developed contemporary city, and we search in any city of the world, I did kind of this exercise, and we searched for these two elements, verticality, circulation, intensity. It was very interesting to find out how here there are 5 cases, but we could find 25 or 55, I'm sure. And if you close a little bit the eyes, you will see that they seem absolutely the same. There is a low basis of urban fabric that from a certain distance disappear, and then we see a center, a small part where the building, where the height and the density and the verticality appears with a lot of strength. What makes us think, I think, and we can deduce with a not very big margin of error, that this density, this verticality, this height is not needed. Sorry, is not needed. In fact, we have, and we can see things like how Barcelona, with 16,000 inhabitants per square kilometer, versus Shanghai with 3,600, a much, much lesser city, lower density city. We can see how Barcelona, one of the highest, the most dense cities in the world, is mainly low rise and horizontal. So this dream, this fight for height, for density, for agglomeration, for verticality is more, I think we cannot say it's related with density. It's related with intensification, with signification, with power, with symbolism, with whatever we can call. I like to use the word intensification because there is a search for intensity in whatever interpretation we can give. It's a way of the city of showing itself in a very, I think this can be done in many ways, but in a very basic, primary and immediate case. And immediately after, I searched for these seafronts of 3 cities, and we can see, if we don't have the names, they could be almost the same. And they are anticipating maybe the new front of Cairo and of so many other cities in the world, no? Where any sign of specificity or of culture, of identity disappears in a picture that we already know, that finally is not even from this century, is from last century, is not even modern, innovative, anything, no? And that is, as we saw before, a bit fake, is not needed, doesn't really correspond to the density of a city, except in the case of Hong Kong. But I will not develop it now, no? And this brings me to this drawing of Rem Koolhaas that I like so much, no? That somehow, I think it doesn't need words, no? Is this schizophrenia of the putting together these objects. Finally, they are objects that together they build nothing, no? And made me think of another sentence of Gertrude Stein, very interesting, when she, in her autobiography, when years after she went back to the United States, to the city where she was born, she wrote this sentence, "There is no there, no?" So, there, no? If we focus more on the sense of intensification, as I said before, and we will keep this a bit until the end, no? Intensification doesn't need to be meters, doesn't need to be floors, doesn't need to be inhabitants per square meter. Intensification can be specificity, can be identity, can be a place of meeting, can be a reference for the rest of the world, can be what is now to invent, and I think what is absolutely needed to be invented, and in the case of Cairo and Egypt is a particularly powerful and rich moment where it can be achieved or not. I will not enter, but it's probably one of the few mega cities in the world with this ability of unfolding itself, but with still a very intense link and presence of its own culture. I think this is a huge value that can or not be used, be developed, be shown to the rest of the world. No, I will choose the public space. Public space says for many reasons that will be unfolded later, but public space as a particularly element of the city that has this capacity of specificity of reference, of venue, of intensification. And here I link it with sustainability. Very quickly, we talk more about sustainability than about architecture nowadays. No, it's like what is also very dangerous. And sustainability always assumed and linked to the three pillars of sustainability: environmental, economical, social. Yes, but if we do the exercise of changing sustainability by urban development, it would work as well, this diagram. It means urban development is the key factor from cities on its economic development, on its environmental conditions, and on its social real life development. So although we use it more to energetic and other levels of quantitative, probably the shape of the city in itself is a key issue that should be much more directly tackled as sustainability. And if we change it by public space, even more and more and more concrete, precise, again, of course, it's fundamental in the configuration, shaping, development of the social life. It happens in the public space. Environmental level of the city, there are many other environmental, I know, but the presence of nature in cities can only happen in public spaces. And economic development as the space of activity, the space of commercial activity, the space of exchange. So I think this could be enough to use public space as a key factor for sustainable development and for shaping the city of the present, that is the city of the future, no? And achieving this intensification that we are searching for. Why public space? I said it before. Why the ability of public space to achieve intensification in cities? I would say, again, there could be other levels, other elements, other references, but I took these four, for me, absolutely important, not only for cities to signify themselves, but to survive, and for people to survive with a minimum human dignity. Culture, structure, image, and nature. I will briefly say what I have in mind talking about this. Public space is the structure of cities. Quite obvious, but we don't talk so often in these terms. Public space is all the network of voids. It means streets, squares, accessible buildings. The physical structure of the city is the structure of its streets, of the network of transportation. This is the accessible part of the city. What is happening here. Okay. Structure as the accessible part of the city. Accessible means also that here, if we have the void and we have the mass. The void is public, the mass is private. The mass is accessed or inhabited by a minority. The void is what we see, from where we see, what contains the facade of the city. All the image of the city happens in its void, happens in the area that is public from the city. So again, the city can be seen, can show itself in the public space with all its consequences. Culture, how the city manifests itself, how the city shows itself, how the city is seen, and how the culture, of course, the culture is not reduced of the public activities, and even less in cities where the public life is not a big tradition. But I think the demand and the pulse for public life is obvious in every cities of the world. I've been working and living in different continents is absolutely the same with different cultures. Everything, every piece of consolidated, qualified public space we give people from all ages, social classes immediately want to use it. And here again, the manifestation of how the different cultures and people and live, express how they use their time, how they use the space, how they interact or not among themselves. It happens in the public sphere only. And as I said before, nature. Nature, per nature, becomes public. Maybe it's not accessible like here in Egypt in many spaces, but is there because it's not, when it's not edificated. And if we want to plant, to introduce green, to introduce nature in the city, even if it was not there before, then we can close it. But is in the void, in the sphere that at least has the vocation not to be public. Even if for governmental reasons it's chosen to be more or less private, I will not enter into this level. And with here I will link to hybrid architecture. Once exposed or proven, I hope, the transcendence of the public space, not only to give identity to structure, to reflect and show the city, to somehow give a higher possibility, a higher level of sustainability, I would like to introduce here the concept of hybrid architecture. This is something, as I said, I've been researching for many years, that is looking at what happens when architecture is at the same time, as we can see here, object, infrastructure, and landscape. We can see the first diagram from Alison Peter-Smithson, where there is a, 1 minute, I'm sorry, and I don't know if you are seeing or not this, where habitat, we can see habitat in landscape, habitat is landscape. This was done in the 60s and was a huge, was step and something kind of revolutionary when the architects say, attention, the built tissue is also landscape. Landscape is not only green and nature, we are building landscapes, but still architecture is architecture. Rosalind Krauss, later in the ETH in Zurich, she introduced also infrastructure like architecture. It's like an intuition how landscape, architecture, and infrastructure, everything acts together. But architecture is architecture, landscape is landscape. She somehow developed in a nice paper how these things dematerialize to become, to interact all together in pieces a little bit less differentiated, but each one keeping his identity. I try to do a step further because this implies that architecture is the object, what we build, then there are the infrastructure, and there is landscape. What happens if we consider that all of them is architecture? No? The landscape is architecture, the infrastructure can be architecture, and the object, of course, is architecture. Here is where I call the hybrid architecture. Hybrid, taking from the concept of botanics, where when you put together two different things of different nature to generate, it can generate something new that goes beyond the collage. No, is not I put two things together and I have a mixed building with many functions. No, I have a thing that has qualities that the parents didn't have. And not to make it too long, I will exemplify and how this is linked with public space, with intensification, and with thinking the city through architecture. No, I was particularly because we can make infinite discourses about how the city should be. We can make infinite theories about sustainability. I always say architects, we talk now more about participation and sustainability and techniques of energetical control than about shape and space. That finally is the only discipline that nobody else but us have the tools to control, to anticipate, and to do it with a certain quality that shapes how people live, how people interact, how people move, and shapes the culture to a very, very deep sense. So I wanted, but of course, this, if we are in the level of planning, there is every now and then one office or one person or a team where architecture maybe doesn't even have a relevant role that plans. But I wanted, yes, I could make a discourse, but I didn't want. I wanted to go to the scale of the intervention of an architect and try to show how we can think the city through architecture, no? And how we need public space for it. And how I believe the level of sustainability, also cultural, social, increases in this case. No? And for this, I just selected 3 examples just to show a bit what I was talking about, with some drawings specifically made for this. And that's it. No? One is the Opera House in Oslo. I don't know if you know it. Done by Snoeta, the Norwegian architects that designed the Biblioteca Alexandrina in Alexandria, another great project. And it's here, no? This concept of hybrid is another lecture in itself, is very conceptual, very complex, but contains, for example, the idea, if I want to do architecture with this ambition of rethinking the city and the public sphere and of absolute commitment of every building we do, every space we do with the city beyond us and not to be closed in our object, a mandatory step is the context. No, I consider I am part of the context. I don't see only myself. I consider I am part of the context. I incorporate it to define myself, but I transform it also. No, in this case, for example, the architects acted in the docks of Oslo, where the sea arrives to the city. So they were very conscious that they were part of a big strip with very peculiar rules that are continuity of surface and flexibility of limits. This seldom happen, no? We can build a dock, we can put a surface, a platform, piers, whatever. We can freely invade the water to make all this machine work. That's what the library finally did. It's a game of surfaces. So becoming context, they take the laws of the context to define itself. What they read, what they are interested to read in the context becomes the order and the concept of the project, or the genesis of the project, no? Our project is part of the docks, so it's a continuous surface. People can go up, down on the roofs, basically is a roof, and can colonize and define the limits how I want. No? Doing this, of course, the issue of the limits also always happens in this hybrid architecture, becomes or very flexible or very multiple. No? If this that in the winter becomes frozen like the sea, and you don't even distinguish where the sea ends and the building starts, we can say that the limit of the building is the limit of the sea. We can say that the limit of the building is the built part. We can say that the limit of the building is the limit of the docks. We can say that the limit of the building is this set of the opera house, the theater, the museum, no, this complex, whatever, no, is also this complexity that adds when I'm public and when I'm city, no. Look how they are not only giving the city a huge amount of public space independently of the building closed or open, and how they transform the city through it, no. This becomes not only connecting the docks with the existing tissue, what was behind the wall, inaccessible, invisible, becomes new territory for the city to explore itself. It's a way of bringing the water to the city, the water to the building directly with a door through a building. No, there is even no line that marks here is the sea, here is the city. No, and this existing limit disappears. No, I could say more things, but I wanted to highlight here mainly how this hybrid architecture, if you act with this ambition of becoming city, of becoming context, of becoming public realm, of commit with the city, even through small pieces, you can do huge urban transformations. No? I think this is I will step to the next project and then go back. I think this is a very, at least to me, it inspires me a lot. How if all architects, of course, we don't need all to be equal and we don't need all to be the same. But if we would all work with this ambition of commitment, with this sense of scale, with this sense of how big we could be, I think we would grow up more and we would definitely reveal the society and the politicians the power of architecture that sometimes now becomes hidden in a role of decoration or making a nice object, no? And even if we are doing small things, we can be doing things of very big scale. And that's why I chose this bridge done in Firenze from it's 1535. It has 600 years, no? Nobody talked about hybrids, contemporaneity, hate, no? And we can see this bridge that I hope you can see my mouse. I don't know because I don't hear you, I don't see you, so I don't. And we can see it one among 4 bridges over the Arno River, no? We see that whoever has been done there, they take the same width, the same rhythm, the same structure, is one bridge more. If we see it in a bit more detail, now I guess you know, all of you, what I'm talking about, we can see that this bridge is very different because on the bridge there is a building. There are houses, there is a bridge, there is a street, but it's an edificated bridge. There are also spaces of contemplation. There are always spaces that are not to walking. Here are shops, here are cars or persons, whatever. So at least we can see 1, 2, 3 speeds, no? From circulation that just crosses, from absolutely static contemplation of the river, from an intermediate commercial activity. I ask myself a lot why we still all over the planet we still go on doing bridges that are elements of this continuity, surfaces that connect to realities, and in between you are nowhere. No? And this is a very small element, but if we go now to this last plan of the city, there are, of course, we can see is the opposite. Here the bridge disappears. The bridge is here, I think you can recognize. The bridge has been edificated with exactly, again, the attention to the context, but not to the context in a submissive way, because I'm here, no? Because I'm in New Cairo and all the houses around me have columns, and this I do the same to be one of them. No, this is a much more abstract regard. I look at the context in the geographical, urban, macro, micro, meso, medium scale, and I decide what I'm interested, what I'm looking at, where do I want to act. No, I'm not submitting myself. I'm becoming context to become strong and transform the context. No? So I look and say, yes, I will be edificated mass. So me as bridge, I take the width exactly of the existing built elements from the medieval city, and that's it, and I do a small bridge. And the level of impact and transformation is amazing. Of course, the discontinuity disappears. I can cross the river in Florence without, like here, if you go to Zamalek, no, you get out, then you get in, no? There is always this experience. This disappear with the same urban experience, same urban continuity. I go from one place to the other. Two sides of the city, very often with different characters, become intimately connected. And two squares, also two important squares. And through this, I also can give an axe and a length, a street with a length that doesn't exist in the medieval city. And that contributes also with new qualities, no, of axiality in a kind of tissue that in its moment didn't have. And the third one is this competition for Tenerife is an island in Canaries, here near the coast of Africa, where all the cities logically are built and placed on its limits, on the rivers, on the seaside, no, seafront, and for a mountain, so they are on the side of the mountain, touching the water, and a highway has been done to connect, to make it work, the traffic, a ring road, a quick ring road that somehow disconnected the cities, or the cities from the nature when they are on the seaside, or the cities from the sea when they are on the mountainside. No? There was an international competition for the port. I don't have a picture from how it was before, but what I'm interested is again to develop this concept of hybrid architecture. It's a pier. This was the object of the competition. Is not a very big intervention again, but I would like you to reflect and to see first what is done here. More than a shape, it's also a shape, and I think that a nice shape, but more than a shape is a prototype. Is a system, is a way of acting that could be applied to absolutely any of the other points and the other cities. No, this is the capital of Santa Cruz. And what do the architects do? In a very first, they say, okay, my pier will be an addition of stripes that take the direction, the longitudinality, the width from the streets of Santa Cruz that go down from the mountain to the river. No, it's not a surface there on the sea. No, it's where all the streets come together on a surface. No, somehow it collects and belongs to the city. It extends the city to the sea and puts all the all the streets together. No, of course there is the problem that all the cities have. That is, how will I cross now the highway? And here is where the system of strips is very brilliantly solved. Herzog and de Meuron won the competition, not Foreign Office for Architectures. I think this project was better, and I also like to show them. No? I also did this drawing to show how it works. It's a very complex, but it's a very, very simple system of 4 prefabricated materials, a concrete slab, and 3 different lengths of pillars that are embedded in a basis of concrete to give different inclinations. And with this, you have all the heights and all the geometries that you want, absolute continuity in all its surface. You enter the shopping areas, you go out, you put some strips together and you have a big surface, you put only one and you have a path into the water, whatever the architect wants. But the interesting thing is this vertical movement allows that this piece crosses the highway without interrupting the flow in ups. The flow is in one sense or the flow on the other. It's and if we see the final plan, again, no transformation of the urban logic and reality through architecture. I think in this case is huge. This is Spain's called Spain Square. This was the original Spain Square in Santa Cruz. Look, multiply this per I don't know what to the, it's not only that now the city arrives to the sea without continuity. Of course, this is a major issue, and that the streets become much longer, that the streets converge in a surface, that the square becomes so big related to the dimension of the city that it becomes a public space of metropolitan area. So at once we are able to talk about metropolitan Santa Cruz, because this is directly on the highway, the island is not so big, and everybody can access it in a very easy and quick way. What becomes that this public space doesn't belong anymore only to the capital, but it belongs to all the island, etc., etc. No, I will not go on, but again, I want to insist how through looking at things in a certain way, finally is about commitment of architecture with the urban life, with the social life, with what happens in the cities. No? We can impact and have changes that go so much beyond the scale of architecture. The model. And the final one, I think I only have to, I think with this I could exemplify what I wanted to exemplify. I didn't want to make it very long, but I wanted to put an element in a vertical element, a skyscraper that usually, if we remember this collage of Rem Koolhaas, they are all bullets like, how do we say, mushrooms that every architect shining and showing himself and killing the city literally. And I thought it was very interesting when I saw this project of Rex in United States, in Louisville, where, yes, it's a skyscraper, not only plastically, I think it's interesting, but there is this sense of transcendence, responsibility, impact that every single piece of architecture can have. No? I think nice these drawings here, even in their conceptual approach, they show how they proceed, no? How they put several towers in one, folding it. It means they elevate the ground to the middle, no? Then it's not so well solved, but if we think about this, this happens in Hong Kong, but for needs, because Hong Kong is the only real vertical city in the world. They don't have space to, they have the mountain and the water, they don't have space to build. And if you go to Hong Kong, it's a complete different city from all the other vertical cities we know. The public spaces are not on the ground. The ground is nothing. The life happens in a higher level, are in between buildings, the circulations, the metro accesses, the pedestrian circulations for sure, no? So it's really a three-dimensional city. What makes absolutely sense if we are talking about so many levels, no? And in this case, I think they did this square on an elevated level, what introduces many new qualities to the use of the city, to the views from the city, and to the views to the city, and also placing it here with this distance, but relating with the other existing elements, somehow they double the length of the seafront, no? So also this, sometimes the impact of one single element of height well placed can be much stronger than putting 10, I don't know where, just to have some elevated building. This is some photos, no? Here we can see, for example, how on the, I don't know if you see my mouse, so on the lower photo, how the ramp to access this elevated public space doesn't work. Of course, it doesn't have scale, it's a bit ridiculous. It's like a ramp to, like the ones to cross the highways in Cairo, no? It's the mechanical stairs, but I don't mind, you know, I think what is behind is so powerful. The upper image, I think it's very, very interesting, no? The scale, the dimension of the building is very impressive. As I said before, it achieves to unfold and extend to a higher level the length of the seafront. But if we look at it, it's still conceived somehow. We can see the existing city as a collage, more than collage, juxtaposition of cubic volumes. And I think it's very beautiful how they extract this logic, but make something completely new, completely different, but somehow keeping the multiplicities of scale and a certain way of doing city. This would be more conceptual. There are more concepts. In fact, there are 6 main concepts that I extracted out of this. I will talk now about 3 that I kindly refer to them. One is context. We've been talking about context all the time. It's about context, context, context. You refer to the context, you become part of the context, so you abstract it so that you know what do you want to achieve and how can you being part of it, you can transform it. No, it's again, it's not an act of submission, it's an act of power, of transformation and of respect. No, and this binomial power and respect, I think, is the only way of changing the world. If we want to use this, I don't think if we change ourselves, that's already a lot, no? But yes, somehow at least unfold to the maximum the possibilities of architecture, that I think is a big responsibility that we have in a moment where all over the world architecture is being taken by everybody but architects. Second concept, limits. Very briefly, we could see in these 3 examples, and I have many more, where this traditional concept of limit, no, inside, outside, limit as a frontier, limit as a line. Where I built is my building, what is outside is outside. No, I think this disappears also. Limits become a diffuse area of transition. Areas of transitions are, I believe, elemental for the quality of space and the quality of architecture. And in this also for the limits that I think it qualifies architecture. Dissociation, as I said, for example, in the case of Oslo, we can say the limit of the building is the limit of the sea. When the building becomes a highway, when the highway ends, the building ends. No, when you melt and you become part of something that already exists, your limits are the limits where it is where is what exists. No, and multiplicity means that there are every intervention can have, or I would dare to say should have, multiple limits. Finally, the ground, and I leave it with these three, not to make it three, to make it too dense. We could see it's not a casualty that all the examples I showed. And now that we are talking about the city unfolding vertically, I think the third dimension becomes more important than ever. No, we are used to receive the ground as a neutral, zero level, that untouchable, sacred, and then we make a hole to do our building and we cover it again. It's completely fake, that because somehow we are taking the decision that we will build the ground again like we found it. I think we saw here at least two examples that if we consider that the ground is a decision of project, is one of the key elements of our design, we can introduce a list of qualities that would be another lecture in itself, not only the spaces of transition, again I say that I claim them highly, but also the possibility of reconfiguring the ground, losing this gestalt idea that it's me against the existing reality, no? So building, figure, background, what exists, it becomes everything one. And that's it for the moment. If we stay with these three concepts, I think it's already 1 minute. Just the last image from Paul Virilio. I don't know if you know him. If not, he's an architect and philosopher, a French philosopher, more philosopher than architect, but his texts, writings, and manifestos are extremely inspiring and interesting, although he's now very old, but he's still, with speed and contemporary city, I think he has a lot of interesting input, a bit philosophical, but it's worth being read. And I adore this drawing that has to do also with the three-dimensionality and the oblique surface that, if it's well explored, is essential to this compromised public sphere that has the public realm that has the capability of reshaping urban environments into more sustainable cities. Thank you very much. I hope you understood, you enjoyed, and we can finish here. Can I stop sharing? Hello?
What's the name?
Rita.
Rita.
Yes.